want to start, just for people who don't know, can you talk about your history with comics? Were you a collector? Like, what got you into this medium?
My mom's an antique lover, and our entire house is antiques, from the furniture to the wall art to the silverware and the cups and dishes, from old 1930s diners.
Okay.
She has a beautiful taste, and she's an artist at heart. Was an artist in college, so our house is always sort of impeccably appointed. But that entails going to a lot of antique markets and flea markets and auction houses. And as a kid, that's like purgatory. Yeah, it's like similar to being burned alive in a vat of oil.
Yeah, this doesn't sound fun.
So I would find the old dusty boxes underneath the furniture.
Okay.
And more often than not, they'd be filled with old magazines and old comic books.
Okay.
And that was my introduction to the comic book world, which I fell in love with probably around the age of 8. Corn-Fed Comics by Kim Deitch.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
as far as I know, Kim Deitch is still alive and still working. At least he was recently.
Okay.
So that's the underground stuff from San Francisco.
Okay. Wow.
And that really blew my mind as an 8-year-old. And then I got into what's his name, Kanan. The boy of the jungle.
Okay.
That kind of stuff. I never got into superheroes, but I found the reprints of EC comics, and those blew my mind. The writing, the art, they're still in my mind top of the comic book pyramid. And I became a lifelong lover. As a teenager, the California Independents came out.
Okay.
So we're talking Pacific Comics and Eclipse and some of those great titles. I fell in love with Bruce Jones's work, who did Alien Worlds and Twisted Tales. You guys can find this stuff on Amazon still.
Okay.
Some of the greatest, they're short stories. So they put 4 short stories at horror or science fiction.
Right, yeah.
And he was carrying the torch of the EC stuff, right?
Okay.
So we found great artists like John Bolton and the new guys and Dave Stevens. And I fell in love with The Rocketeer.
Nice.
So later, when I did The Punisher, I got introduced to these guys,
Okay.
and I became friends with people like Bernie Wrightson and Dave Stevens, who were both dear friends until they both died, which was heartbreaking. Some of the first friends, real friends that I lost were comic book people.
Okay.
And then you see their work lives on, and they continue to inspire new generations. And that legacy media, the kind of the fact that you can go downstairs here at San Diego and you can find those books,
Yeah.
and you can pick them up and you can read them. And then I branched out, all kinds of stuff, a Black Hole, and the independent stuff is really what turns me on.
Okay. It's a very freeing medium, right?
You can do absolutely anything, where movies and TV has a budget.
Yeah.
The world is your oyster. Whatever you can conceive, you can create.
Well, I mean, talk about from this story. Like, if you tried to tell this story in live action,
Right.
it would be near impossible, I would imagine.
The
right?
Lycan?
Yeah.
Oh, no. This would make a great movie.
Oh, really? It would, but I'm talking about
there-
like budget and
It would
the limitations.
doing the werewolves, and that's always the trick of a werewolf movie, and that's why things like The Howling survive in this day and age, because the effects are still great. American Werewolf in London, the effects are still top notch. And if you were to do a werewolf movie, I would insist on doing practical effects.
Sure, of course.
You can do it, and it's always going to be better. The limitations of practical effects, the suspension of disbelief, it's still more believable than what is essentially a cartoon character. Although, AI is getting pretty darn close to getting to the point where you can't tell the damn difference.
Yeah.
And once we can sort of master the control, once AI spits out exactly what you want it to,
right,
instead of just living with some insane imagination that this thing seems to have, this collective intelligence that it seems to spit out. Sometimes it's brilliant. but we don't have the control yet from panel to or from frame to frame, from shot to shot. That continuity isn't there yet, but it will be.
Is there a character in the Lycan that you're particularly fond of?
I like them all. What's great is it's a band of hunters, and they're independent men. They live their own lives. They're professionals. And I loved all the old movies from the 70s where it dealt a lot with men who lived outside the law, that were professional, great at what they did, and they didn't answer to anybody. They didn't have a boss. And that's this group of Lycans, and they're kind of big game hunters.
Yeah.
And they're coming back from Africa, and they've got a ship full of pelts and live animals, and they shipwreck on this little English isle where the residents are having a wolf problem.
To say the least.
So the deal is that, and it's during the war between the French and the English, late 1700s. The English, who are running the castle that they've barricaded themselves in, make a deal. They say, "We'll fix your boat if you guys help us with this wolf problem." And then there's also a convent behind the walls of this fort.
Suspicious nuns.
And there's some suspicious looking nuns with sexy nuns. We have to have sexy nuns. So
that's a requirement.
So that's sort of the setup.
I want to talk about your collaborators, because the art in the books is phenomenal.
Thank you.
You know this community. How did you choose who do you want to work with on this story?
It's like casting.
Yeah.
Once you get a story, for me, I've got to cast the right cinematographer to tell that story.
Sure.
So it's just like finding a cinematographer. The look. You start making a lookbook, from films and from other comic books, and try to find. And then it's the long process of finding a guy who is talented, young enough that he's not been bought up by Marvel or DC.
Okay.
But experienced enough that he can get the job done.
Sure.
And you can trust him. And has the eye that you're looking for.
Okay.
Right. So those three things have to come together, and then that we'll accept the meager pay that we offer, which isn't so meager. We pay our artists. I respect in the comic book world, the artist is who I respect the most, and then of course the writer. We got lucky. So me and a screenwriter named David James Kelly came up with the story. And I was a huge fan of Mike Carey, who's an Eisner-winning writer.
Yeah.
And he just happened to be free and intrigued enough by the story. He told me, he said, "I never adapt anybody's stories. I always write my own stuff."
Yeah.
But this kind of grabbed me, and I had time. I had a window, and so he cranked it out. And for me, it's one of the best scripts, comic book scripts that I've read. It's really good.
We were talking before we started rolling cameras about just how long were you sitting on the idea? How long were you mulling over what you wanted this to become?
Well, I originally had this thing going. I had a comic book company called Raw Studios,
okay.
And we did 4 or 5 books, and I had a blast and made a lot of great friends in the comic industry. And I had the Lycan as one of those, and I actually had an English artist named Sean O'Connor, who was brilliant, because I wanted a Bernie Wrightson kind of feel. I wanted someone who could pay attention to the details, and that was getting harder and harder to find.
Yeah.
But I found a guy, and he did 1.5 issues and then dropped off the face of the planet, disappeared, literally. Like, I haven't seen or heard from Sean O'Connor in 15 years. So I was heartbroken, because he was delivering just wonderful work. And so I put the script in a drawer, and it sat there for 15 years.
Isn't that crazy? How long an idea can gestate like that?
Until I formed a new company called Renegade with my partner Courtney Penn, and we started producing television and creating movies.
Okay.
We did some westerns. We had a western that was #1 on Netflix not too long ago called Murder at Yellowstone City.
Okay.
We did Troppo together, which was #4 on Amazon. So she said, "Hey, we should branch out and break out a comic book. Do you have anything?"
Yeah. Actually, I do.
So that was the one that got away, and we were able to dust it off. And then I, through going to comic book shops, flipping through all the independent books, hundreds and hundreds of them, I found Diego Yapor, who'd worked for heavy metal. I found him in a heavy metal issue. and he happened to be available.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's a great book, and we're highly going to recommend it to everybody
thank
who
you.
reads CBR.
It is a great book.
I can't wait to see what else you do. Tom,
Thanks, buddy.
for coming by.
Appreciate
man. It's a pleasure
Thank
seeing
you.
Yeah.
Have a good con.
Thanks, man. You too.
You bet.
Thanks, brother.